The boardroom was supposed to be her kingdom. Instead, it became the place where Vanessa Sterling learned that 30 years of perfection could be destroyed in 30 seconds. When the man she trusted most grabbed her throat in front of 200 cameras and told her she was nothing without his permission. But what Richard Blackwell didn't know was that halfway across O'Hare Airport, a tired single father was about to teach both of them what real power actually looked like. If you want to see how a 6-year-old girl with a unicorn bandage brought down a billion-dollar empire, stay until the end. And hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. The first thing Vanessa Sterling noticed when she stepped off the private jet at Chicago O'Hare was the smell of rain on concrete. The second thing was Richard Blackwell's face and the cold certainty in his eyes that told her everything she needed to know about what was coming next. She'd known Richard for 12 years, trusted him for 11, started questioning that trust about 6 months ago when the merger documents landed on her desk with terms that made no financial sense and a marriage clause that made even less. But she'd flown to Chicago anyway because that's what CEOs did. They showed up, they handled problems, they controlled the narrative. Except Vanessa Sterling was about to learn she'd never controlled anything at all. "We need to talk," Richard said, falling into step beside her as she walked through the private terminal. His voice had that smooth executive tone he used when he wanted something, preferably before you do anything stupid. Vanessa kept walking, her heels clicking against polished floors. She was wearing a charcoal suit that cost more than most people's monthly rent, her dark hair pulled back in a style that said professional without saying trying too hard. Everything about her appearance was calculated. Everything about her life had been calculated since she was 16 years old, and her father sat her down in his study to explain that being born into wealth meant you didn't get the luxury of being weak. "I'm not signing the merger agreement," she said quietly. "And I'm definitely not marrying your nephew to make the board feel better about corporate optics." Richard's jaw tightened, just slightly, just enough. "Vanessa, be reasonable." "I am being reasonable. The merger undervalues Sterling Industries by almost 40%, and the marriage clause is insulting. So no, we're not doing this." They'd reached the main terminal now, where regular people flew commercial and waited in lines and dealt with delays like normal human beings. Vanessa barely registered them. She was too focused on the black town car that should have been waiting outside, too focused on getting back to New York, too focused on the 100 different fires she'd need to put out once the board realized she wasn't going to roll over. That's when Richard grabbed her arm. Not hard, not yet. Just firm enough to stop her momentum, to make her turn and look at him, to remind her that for all her titles and stock options and corner office authority, she was still 5'6" and 120 pounds. And he was 6'2" and had stopped pretending to be her friend. "You don't get to say no," he said softly. Vanessa looked down at his hand on her arm, then back up at his face. "Let go of me. Not until you understand what's at stake here. Your father built Sterling Industries into something that matters. You really want to destroy his legacy because you're too proud to see the bigger picture?" "My father's been dead for 4 years, Richard. And the bigger picture is that you and the board are trying to strip me of control while keeping me around as a mascot. So again, let go of me." He didn't. Instead, he pulled her closer, his voice dropping to something that might have sounded concerned if Vanessa hadn't seen the calculation behind his eyes. "You're not thinking clearly. You've been under a lot of stress. Maybe you need some time to..." She yanked her arm free, or tried to. Richard's grip tightened just enough to hurt, just enough to send a spike of genuine fear through her chest. Because she'd seen this before. Seen powerful men decide that women who said no were just confused, just emotional, just needed to be handled. "Richard, this is your last chance to walk away." He smiled. Actually smiled. "Or what? You'll fire me." "The board loves me, Vanessa. You're the one on thin ice." That's when she slapped him. It wasn't calculated, wasn't strategic. It was pure instinct, pure fury, the product of 30 years of swallowing her anger and playing the game and being the perfect daughter executive CEO that everyone expected. Her palm cracked across his face hard enough to turn heads, hard enough to make him stumble back half a step, hard enough to make him forget they were in public. Richard's hand shot out and grabbed her throat. Not squeezing, not yet. But the threat was there, crystal clear, as his face went from shocked to furious to something darker. Around them, people stopped walking. Phones came out. A woman gasped, but nobody moved. Nobody helped. They just watched. Like Vanessa's life was entertainment, like violence in expensive suits was somehow more acceptable than violence in dirty clothes. You entitled little... Richard's fingers started to tighten. Do you have any idea what you've just done? Vanessa couldn't breathe, couldn't speak, could only think, with perfect clarity, that she was about to be choked unconscious in the middle of O'Hare Airport, and nobody was going to stop it because Richard Blackwell was rich and powerful, and men like him didn't face consequences for putting women in their place. Then a voice cut through the noise. Calm, steady, completely unimpressed. That's enough. Richard's head turned. His grip loosened just slightly, and Vanessa found herself looking at a man who seemed like he'd walked out of a completely different universe than the one she inhabited. He was maybe 32, with the kind of face that was more interesting than handsome. Angular jaw, dark eyes, a scar across his left eyebrow that said he'd lived through something that left marks. He was wearing jeans and a worn leather jacket, carrying a small backpack in one hand and holding the hand of a little girl with wild brown curls and a bright pink coat in the other. He looked absolutely nothing like the corporate sharks Vanessa spent her life swimming with, and he looked completely unafraid. I said that's enough, the man repeated, his voice still calm but with an edge underneath that suggested he was very comfortable with conflict. Let her go. Richard's face flushed. This is a private conversation. Mind your business. It stopped being private when you put your hands on her. The man didn't move closer, didn't need to. There was something in his posture, relaxed but ready, that said he'd been in fights before and won more than he lost. So I'm going to say it one more time, let her go. For a long moment, nobody moved. Vanessa could feel Richard's fingers still pressed against her throat, could feel her pulse hammering against his palm, could feel the weight of 100 phone cameras recording every second of her humiliation. Then Richard released her. Vanessa stumbled back, one hand flying to her throat, her breath coming in harsh gasps as she tried to process what had just happened. Richard was already straightening his suit, already putting on the smooth executive mask, already preparing his narrative. You're going to regret this, he said quietly, looking at Vanessa like the stranger didn't exist. All of it. Then he turned and walked away, disappearing into the crowd like violence was just another business transaction he could write off. Vanessa stood there, shaking. She was still standing when the man with the little girl walked over, his expression concerned but not pitying, which was somehow worse because pity she could handle. Pity she could dismiss. Concern from a stranger felt dangerous. You okay? He asked. Vanessa opened her mouth, closed it. She wanted to say yes. Wanted to say she was fine, she had it handled. She didn't need help from random strangers who probably wanted something. But the words wouldn't come because she wasn't okay, and she didn't have it handled, and for the first time in years she had absolutely no idea what to do next. The little girl tugged on the man's hand. Daddy, she's bleeding. Vanessa touched her throat. Her fingers came away red. Richard's ring must have caught her skin when he grabbed her. It was a small cut, barely worth noticing, but the sight of her own blood made something crack inside her chest. I have a bandage, the little girl announced solemnly. She was maybe 6 years old, with enormous brown eyes and that total lack of filter that small children possessed. She dug into her coat pocket and pulled out a pink bandage covered in tiny unicorns. It's my favorite, but you can have it. Vanessa stared at the bandage, then at the little girl, then at the man, who was watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. Her voice came out rough. Thank you, but I'm fine. You're not fine, the man said quietly, not unkindly, just stating a fact. And you're shaking. When's the last time you ate something? I don't... Vanessa tried to remember. Breakfast had been coffee. Lunch had been a protein bar on the jet. That's not relevant. Emma, the man said, still looking at Vanessa. Why don't you put that bandage on the lady's hand while I find some water? Before Vanessa could protest, the little girl, Emma, was carefully peeling the backing off the unicorn bandage and pressing it against the cut on Vanessa's throat with the intense concentration of a surgeon. It should have been ridiculous, A 30-year-old billionaire CEO accepting first aid from a 6-year-old in the middle of an airport. But somehow it wasn't. Somehow it was the first genuine kindness anyone had shown Vanessa in longer than she could remember. The man returned with the bottle of water and a handful of napkins. "I'm Ryan," he said, handing her both. "Ryan Carter, that's Emma. And before you tell me again that you're fine, you should know that I spent 6 years in the Army and I've seen enough people in shock to recognize the signs." Vanessa took the water. Her hands were still shaking. "I'm not in shock?" "Right. You're just having a totally normal Tuesday where your business partner assaults you in public and then walks away like nothing happened." Ryan's voice was dry, but not mocking. "Look, I don't know your situation, and I'm not trying to get involved, but you need to sit down for a minute before you pass out." "Or, it's some worse." He was right. Vanessa hated that he was right, but she could feel the adrenaline crash starting, could feel her knees going weak, could feel 30 years of perfect control starting to fracture into something messy and human and completely unacceptable. She sat down on one of those terrible airport benches that were designed to be uncomfortable. Emma sat next to her, still holding her hand, examining the unicorn bandage with pride. Ryan stood nearby, not hovering, but present, his eyes scanning the crowd with the kind of awareness that said, "Old habits died hard." "Do you have somewhere to go?" he asked after a moment. Vanessa almost laughed. Did she have somewhere to go? She had a penthouse in Manhattan, a vacation house in the Hamptons, a standing reservation at half the 5-star hotels in the world. She had everywhere to go and nowhere that felt safe. "I'll call my car," she said finally. "And go where? Back to New York? Back to whatever situation you just tried to walk away from?" Ryan shook his head. "I'm not trying to tell you what to do, but whatever just happened, it looked like it's been building for a while. And if that guy is willing to put hands on you in the middle of an airport, I'm guessing he's willing to do worse when there aren't witnesses." Vanessa looked up at him. "You don't know anything about my life." "You're right, I don't. But I know what desperation looks like. And I know what it's like to realize that the people you trusted are the ones trying to destroy you." Ryan's voice was quiet. "So if you need time to figure out your next move and you don't have anywhere safe to do it, Emma and I are heading back to Chicago. You're welcome to join us. No strings, no expectations. Just a place to breathe for a minute." It was insane. Completely insane. Vanessa Sterling didn't get into cars with strangers, didn't accept help from people she didn't know, didn't make impulsive decisions based on fear and exhaustion and the feeling that her entire world was collapsing around her. Except she'd spent her whole life making careful, calculated decisions, and it had led her here, to an airport bench with a unicorn bandage on her throat and the taste of failure in her mouth. "Why would you do that?" she asked. "You don't know me." Ryan looked at Emma, who was still holding Vanessa's hand like it was the most natural thing in the world, then back at Vanessa. "But because when my wife died 3 years ago, a stranger showed up at my door with groceries and refused to leave until I ate something. Said she'd been where I was, and she knew what it was like to feel like you were drowning. I never got to pay her back, so maybe this is me passing it forward." There was something in his voice when he mentioned his wife. Grief, but old grief, the kind that had been lived with and survived. Vanessa recognized it because she'd heard the same tone in her own voice when she talked about her father. Loss that didn't go away but learned to coexist with life. She should say no, should call her lawyer, call her assistant, call anyone from her actual life and start damage control. Should do what she'd always done, fight, strategize, win. Instead, she heard herself say, "Okay." Ryan blinked. "Okay? I'll come with you. Just for tonight. I need to think, and I can't do that if I go back to New York right now." Vanessa stood up, her legs steadier than they'd been a minute ago. "But I'm paying for a hotel. I'm not imposing on—" "Hotels ask for ID," Ryan interrupted. "And if your business partner is the kind of guy who just choked you in public, I'm guessing he's got the resources to track credit cards. You want time to think? You need to actually disappear for a minute." He was right, again. Vanessa hated it. But Richard had connections everywhere, the board, the media, private investigators who could find anyone with enough money. If she checked into a hotel under her own name, he'd know within hours. "I have a guest room," Ryan continued. "It's small and the house needs work, but it's quiet, and nobody's going to look for a Manhattan CEO in a Chicago suburb." Emma tugged on Vanessa's hand. We have spaghetti for dinner. Daddy makes really good sauce. Vanessa looked down at the little girl. With her wild curls and bright eyes and complete faith that the world was a good place full of people who helped each other. She wondered when she'd lost that faith, wondered if she'd ever had it. Okay, she said again. But just for tonight. Tom. Ryan's car was a 10-year-old Honda Civic with a car seat in the back and a collection of Emma's drawings magneted to the dashboard. It smelled like French fries and strawberry air freshener and absolutely nothing like the leather interior town cars Vanessa usually traveled in. She sat in the passenger seat, her designer luggage crammed into the trunk, and tried not to think about how completely insane this was. She was Vanessa Sterling. She didn't run away from problems. She solved them, controlled them, won. Except she'd been trying to win for 30 years and it had gotten her exactly nowhere. Emma chattered from the back seat, explaining in exhaustive detail about her school field trip to the aquarium and how sharks were actually nice if you were. Respectful, and how her best friend Madison had thrown up on the bus, but it was okay because the teacher had extra plastic bags. Ryan drove with the kind of easy competence that came from doing the same route 1,000 times, occasionally interjecting with questions that kept Emma's monologue from going completely off the rails. Vanessa watched them through the rear-view mirror, watched the way Ryan's shoulders relaxed when Emma laughed, watched the way Emma leaned forward against her car seat straps, desperate to share every detail of her day with the one person who cared most. This was what a family looked like. The thought came unbidden, and Vanessa shoved it away immediately. She had a family. Had. Past tense. Her father was dead. Her mother had left when Vanessa was 12, unable to handle the pressure of being married to a man who loved his company more than his wife. Vanessa had chosen the company, chosen power, chosen to be her father's daughter in every way that mattered, and now that company was trying to destroy her. You okay? Ryan asked quietly. Vanessa realized she'd been staring out the window for the last 10 minutes, watching Chicago suburbs roll past in a blur of houses and strip malls and normal people living normal lives. Fine. You keep saying that. I don't think you know what the word means. I know exactly what it means. It means I'm handling it. Ryan was quiet for a moment. Then, you don't have to handle everything by yourself, you know. Vanessa laughed. It came out bitter. Yes, I do. That's the job. What job? Being a CEO? Being me. She hadn't meant to say it like that, hadn't meant to let the exhaustion bleed through. But it was out now, hanging in the air between them, and Ryan didn't push, didn't offer platitudes or advice or any of the things people usually said when they thought they understood her life. He just nodded. Yeah, I get that. Emma's chatter filled the silence, and they drove the rest of the way without talking. Ryan's house was exactly what Vanessa expected. A small 2-story in a quiet neighborhood with a front yard that needed mowing and paint that was just starting to peel around the windows. It was the kind of house that said working class and single parent and doing the best we can. It was nothing like the penthouse Vanessa called home. Inside was clean but cluttered in the way houses with kids always were. Shoes by the door, jackets on hooks, Emma's backpack dumped on the floor with papers spilling out. The furniture was old but comfortable, the kind of stuff you bought because it was practical, not because it matched some designer's vision. Sorry about the mess, Ryan said, scooping up Emma's backpack and hanging it properly. I wasn't exactly expecting company. I'm boss. It's fine. Vanessa stood in the entryway, her $1,000 heels feeling absurd against worn hardwood floors. Really? Emma had already kicked off her shoes and was halfway up the stairs. I'm going to show you my room, she called back. Emma, let the lady settle in first, Ryan said, but there was affection in his voice, not frustration. It's okay, Vanessa heard herself say. I'd like to see it. She followed Emma upstairs, very aware of Ryan watching them with an expression she couldn't quite read. Emma's room was an explosion of pink and purple and every Disney princess ever created. There were drawings taped to the walls, a bookshelf overflowing with stories, and a collection of stuffed animals that probably violated some kind of fire code. This is Mr. Whiskers, Emma said, holding up a battered teddy bear. He's very old. Daddy gave him to me when I was a baby. Vanessa took the bear carefully, like it might break. He looks very loved. Daddy says the best things get worn out because we use them so much, like his jacket and my favorite books. Emma climbed onto her bed, which was covered in a comforter with cartoon unicorns. Do you have a favorite stuffed animal? The question was so innocent. The question was so completely outside Vanessa's normal reality that she almost didn't know how to answer. I used to. A long time ago. What happened to it? I don't know. I think my mother threw it away when I got too old for toys. Emma's eyes went wide with horror. That's so sad. It was sad. Vanessa hadn't thought about that bear in 20 years, but suddenly she could remember it perfectly. A white rabbit with blue ears that she'd named Snowball. She'd slept with it every night until she was 10, until her mother decided that sterling women didn't coddle themselves with childish things. Yeah, Vanessa said quietly. It was. Ryan appeared in the doorway. Emma, why don't you let Vanessa get settled? You can show her the rest of your toys after dinner. Okay? Emma bounced off the bed with the kind of energy only 6-year-olds possessed. We're having spaghetti. She thundered back downstairs, leaving Ryan and Vanessa standing in the hallway. Up close, Vanessa could see the exhaustion around his eyes, the kind that came from working too hard and sleeping too little and raising a kid alone. But there was something solid about him too, something steady. Guest room's this way, he said. He led her to a small room at the end of the hall. It had a bed, a dresser, a window that looked out over the backyard. Nothing fancy, nothing designed to impress. Just a room. Bathroom's across the hall, Ryan said. Towels are in the cabinet, and if you need anything, just ask. Vanessa set her luggage down. The designer suitcase looked ridiculous against the worn carpet. Thank you for this. I know it's strange. Strange is relative. Ryan leaned against the doorframe. You want to talk about what happened at the airport? Not really. Fair enough. But if that guy shows up here, I need to know what we're dealing with. We. Like they were a team. Like Vanessa wasn't a stranger who'd inserted herself into his life based on nothing but desperation and a 6-year-old's kindness. Richard Blackwell. He's my business partner. Or was, I'm not sure anymore. Vanessa sat down on the edge of the bed, suddenly exhausted. The board wants to merge our company with another one, and Richard's been pushing for it. I refused, so he decided to persuade me. Ryan's expression didn't change, but something hardened in his eyes. Persuade. They're what we're calling assault now? In my world? Yes. Your world sounds like it sucks. Vanessa laughed. Actually laughed, the sound surprising her. It really does. So why stay in it? It was such a simple question, such an obvious question. And Vanessa had no good answer except the one she'd been telling herself for 30 years. Because it was hers. Because her father built it. Because walking away would mean admitting that everything she'd sacrificed had been for nothing. Because I don't know how to do anything else, she said finally. Ryan studied her for a moment. I think you're smarter than you give yourself credit for. Then he left, closing the door behind him. And Vanessa was alone for the first time since Richard had grabbed her throat. She pulled out her phone. 17 missed calls, 32 texts, half of them from Richard, half from her assistant, all of them some variation of "Where are you?" and "Call me immediately," and the board is furious. Vanessa turned off her phone. Dinner was spaghetti with meat sauce, garlic bread that came from a grocery store bakery, and a salad that Emma picked all the tomatoes out of. They ate at a small kitchen table that wobbled slightly, and nobody talked about corporate mergers or assault or the fact that Vanessa was a billionaire hiding in a suburb. Instead, Emma told a rambling story about her friend's hamster that had escaped and lived in the walls for 3 days before being recaptured. Ryan asked about Vanessa's flight, just making conversation, normal human interaction that didn't have an agenda. And Vanessa found herself relaxing in a way she hadn't in years. This is really good, she said, gesturing at her plate. Ryan smiled. It's jarred sauce and pasta, not exactly gourmet. I haven't had a home-cooked meal in months. Gourmet is overrated. What do you usually eat? Vanessa thought about her usual routine, protein shakes for breakfast, salads from overpriced delis for lunch, whatever she could grab between meetings for dinner. Whatever I can eat at my desk. Emma looked scandalized. You eat at your desk? But that's where you work. I work a lot. That's sad, Emma announced with the brutal honesty of childhood. Daddy says dinner is family time, even if it's just us. Even if it's just us. Like a family of two is still a real family. Like you didn't need blood or marriage or legal documents to matter to each other. Vanessa had spent most of her life in boardrooms surrounded by people, and she'd never felt less alone than she did right now, eating spaghetti with a single father and his 6-year-old daughter. After dinner, Emma begged to show Vanessa her favorite movie. Ryan tried to intervene, but Vanessa surprised herself by saying yes. They ended up on the couch, Emma between them, a blanket over all three, some animated film about talking animals that Vanessa barely registered because she was too busy noticing how comfortable this was. How normal. How much she'd been missing without even knowing it. Halfway through the movie, Emma fell asleep with her head on Vanessa's shoulder. Ryan lifted her carefully, his movements practiced and gentle, and carried her upstairs. Vanessa heard him singing something soft, heard Emma's sleepy protest, heard the quiet click of a bedroom door closing. When he came back downstairs, he found Vanessa standing by the window, looking out at the dark street. You can stay as long as you need, he said quietly. I meant that. Why? Vanessa turned to face him. You don't know anything about me. I could be dangerous. Could be, but you're not. Ryan crossed his arms, leaning against the wall. I've seen dangerous. You're not it. You're just someone who's been fighting for so long you forgot what it feels like to stop. The words hit harder than they should have. Harder than Vanessa wanted them to. I don't know how to stop, she admitted. Yeah, I figured. Ryan was quiet for a moment. When my wife died, I didn't know how to keep going. Thought I'd just power through, be strong for Emma, handle it like I'd handled everything else. Took me 6 months to realize I was drowning. Took another year to figure out that asking for help wasn't weakness. What changed? I stopped trying to be the guy I thought I was supposed to be and started being the guy Emma actually needed. He smiled, sad, but genuine. Turns out those weren't the same person. Vanessa understood that more than she wanted to admit. She'd spent her whole life being the daughter her father needed, the CEO her company demanded, the woman who never showed weakness or doubt or any of the messy humanity that got in the way of success. And it had destroyed her. I should go to bed, she said. Thank you. For dinner. For everything. Vanessa. Ryan waited until she looked at him. Whatever you decide to do next, whether you go back to New York tomorrow or stay for a while, just make sure it's what you actually want, not what you think you're supposed to want. She nodded, not trusting herself to speak, and went upstairs to the guest room. That night, lying in a bed that wasn't hers, in a house that felt more like home than her penthouse ever had, Vanessa Sterling cried for the first time in 10 years. She cried for the girl she'd been before her mother left, for the woman she'd become in the name of success, for the life she'd never had because she'd been too busy building an empire that was trying to kill her. And when she finally fell asleep, she didn't dream about boardrooms or mergers or Richard's hands around her throat. She dreamed about unicorn bandages and spaghetti dinners and a little girl's voice saying, "That's sad," like it was the simplest truth in the world. Because it was. Vanessa woke up to the sound of a 6-year-old having a full conversation with someone about pancakes. It took her a moment to remember where she was, that she wasn't in her penthouse, that the voices weren't her assistant coordinating her morning schedule, that the sunlight coming through cheap curtains was real and not filtered through floor-to-ceiling windows that cost more than most cars. She checked her phone. 23 new messages. She turned it back off. Downstairs, Emma was sitting at the kitchen table with a coloring book, explaining to her stuffed bear why chocolate chip pancakes were superior to blueberry. Ryan stood at the stove, flipping actual pancakes, wearing sweatpants and a faded army t-shirt that had seen better days. He looked up when Vanessa appeared in the doorway. Coffee? Please. He poured her a mug from a pot that looked older than Emma. The coffee was strong and slightly bitter, and nothing like the expensive organic blend Vanessa usually drank. It tasted better. Did you sleep? Ryan asked. Eventually. Vanessa sat down at the table, very aware that she was wearing yesterday's clothes and probably looked like hell. Emma didn't seem to notice, too busy adding purple to what appeared to be a drawing of a dragon. "That's Steve," Emma announced, pointing at the dragon. "He's nice, but he has anxiety about flying." "Steve the anxious dragon," Vanessa repeated, trying to match Emma's serious tone. "That makes sense." "Do you like pancakes?" Emma asked, already moving on to the next topic with the attention span of a caffeinated squirrel. "I do. Daddy makes the best pancakes. He puts chocolate chips in them, but not too many because too much sugar makes me crazy." Emma said this last part like she was quoting someone, probably Ryan. "One time I had 3 pancakes and I couldn't sit still for school, and Miss Peterson said I was being disruptive." Ryan set a plate in front of Vanessa. 3 pancakes, chocolate chips arranged in a smiley face. It was such a small thing, such a dad thing to do, and it made Vanessa's chest tight. "Thank you," she said quietly. They ate breakfast like it was normal, like Vanessa belonged there, sitting at a wobbly kitchen table with mismatched chairs, listening to Emma narrate her entire thought process about whether unicorns could swim. Ryan mostly listened, occasionally asking questions that kept the conversation from spiraling into complete chaos. And Vanessa found herself relaxing in a way that should have been impossible. She was a fugitive from her own life, hiding in a stranger's house, and somehow this felt safer than anywhere she'd been in years. After breakfast, Ryan suggested that Vanessa might want to borrow some comfortable clothes. "No offense, but that suit's going to get uncomfortable fast." He was right. Vanessa's designer outfit felt like armor now, stiff and wrong against her skin. Ryan disappeared upstairs and came back with sweatpants and a hoodie that were too big but soft and worn and smelled like laundry detergent instead of dry cleaning chemicals. "These were my wife's," he said, handing them over. "I kept a few things. Emma likes to wear her scarves sometimes." Vanessa took the clothes carefully. "Are you sure?" "Oh, yeah, she'd have liked you, I think. She was always bringing home strays." Ryan smiled, but there was grief underneath it. That's what she called them. People who needed help but didn't know how to ask for it. "I'm a stray now?" "If the shoe fits." Vanessa changed in the guest room, trading her $1,000 suit for dead woman's sweatpants, and tried not to think about what that said about her life choices. When she came back downstairs, Emma was putting on her coat. "We're going to the park," she announced. "You should come." "Emma, Vanessa might want to," Ryan started. "I'd like to come," Vanessa interrupted. Vanessa. Because the alternative was sitting in that guest room, alone with her thoughts and her turned-off phone and the growing certainty that her entire life was imploding back in New York. "If that's okay." Ryan looked at her for a long moment, like he was trying to figure out what she was running from. Then he nodded. "Yeah, it's okay. The park was 3 blocks away, the kind of neighborhood playground with worn equipment and wood chips that had seen better days. There were other parents there, other kids, normal people doing normal things on a Saturday morning. Nobody looked at Vanessa like she was a billionaire CEO. Nobody looked at her at all. It was the most invisible she'd felt in years. Emma ran straight for the swings, demanding that Ryan push her super high but not too high, because I'm not crazy. Vanessa stood off to the side, watching them, watching the easy affection between father and daughter, watching the way Ryan knew exactly how high to push without being asked. "You're good with her," Vanessa said when Emma ran off to conquer the slide. Ryan shrugged. "I mess up constantly. Last week I forgot it was pajama day at school, and she cried for 20 minutes because all the other kids got to wear their favorite pajamas and she was stuck in regular clothes. But you're here. You show up. That's the job." Ryan leaned against the swing set, his eyes tracking Emma as she climbed. "When Sarah died, everyone kept telling me I was doing such a good job, being so strong, handling it so well. But I wasn't. I was barely functional. I just didn't have a choice because Emma needed me to keep going." "How did she die?" Vanessa asked, then immediately regretted it. "Sorry, that's too personal. Cancer. Ovarian. By the time they caught it, it was everywhere." "Oh." Ryan's voice was flat, factual, the way people talked about trauma they'd survived but not processed. "She fought for 18 months. Died 3 weeks after Emma's 3rd birthday." "I'm sorry. See." "Yeah, me too." He was quiet for a moment, watching Emma wave at him from the top of the slide. The worst part wasn't losing her. I mean, that was hell, but you expect that. The worst part was watching Emma not understand why Mommy stopped coming home. She kept asking when Sarah was coming back from the hospital, and I didn't know how to explain that she wasn't, that she was just gone. Vanessa thought about her own mother, who hadn't died but had left anyway when the pressure of being married to a workaholic billionaire became too much. She tried to take Vanessa with her, but Vanessa had been 12 and angry and convinced that her mother was the weak one for giving up. She'd chosen her father, chosen the company, chosen power over love. She hadn't spoken to her mother in 18 years. "Does it get easier?" Vanessa asked. "No. You just get better at carrying it." Ryan looked at her. "Why do I get the feeling we're not just talking about my wife anymore?" Before Vanessa could answer, Emma came running over, breathless and wild-haired. "I need help with the monkey bars." Ryan went, and Vanessa watched him lift Emma up so she could reach the first bar, watched him stand underneath her ready to catch, watched the absolute trust on Emma's face as she swung from bar to bar, knowing her dad wouldn't let her fall. That's what family looked like, Vanessa thought. Not blood, not obligation, just someone showing up day after day, ready to catch you when you slipped. They stayed at the park for 2 hours. Emma made friends with 3 other kids and organized an elaborate game that seemed to involve dragons and pirates and a lot of running in circles. Ryan sat on a bench with Vanessa, drinking coffee from a thermos he'd brought, and they talked about nothing important. The weather. The park renovations that had been promised for 3 years and never happened. The way Emma had recently decided she wanted to be a veterinarian who specialized in mythical creatures. It was the most normal conversation Vanessa had had in a decade. On the walk home, Emma held both their hands, swinging between them like they were a unit, like this was something they did every Saturday. And Vanessa let herself pretend, just for a moment, that this could be her life. That she could be the kind of person who went to parks and made pancakes and didn't have to armor herself in designer suits just to survive the day. Back at the house, Emma demanded lunch and then immediately fell asleep on the couch in the middle of a cartoon, exhausted from her park adventures. Ryan covered her with the blanket and gestured for Vanessa to follow him to the kitchen. "I need to ask you something," he said once they were out of earshot, "and I need you to be honest with me." Vanessa's stomach tightened. "Okay." "That guy from the airport, Richard, is he going to come looking for you?" "Eventually, probably." Vanessa leaned against the counter. "But he doesn't know where I am. I haven't used my credit cards, haven't turned on my phone except to check messages. As far as anyone knows, I just vanished. And when he finds you, I don't know." The admission felt like failure. "I'm supposed to have a plan. I always have a plan. But I don't know what to do anymore." Ryan nodded slowly. "Can I tell you what I think?" "Please. I think you've spent your whole life playing a game where the rules were rigged against you from the start. And I think you're finally realizing that winning that game means losing yourself." He paused. "So maybe it's time to stop playing." "It's not that simple." "Why not?" "Because—" Vanessa stopped. "Because why?" "Because her father built that company. Her father was dead. Because the board was counting on her. The board was trying to destroy her. Because walking away meant admitting defeat. Maybe defeat was the smart choice. Because I don't know who I am if I'm not Vanessa Sterling, CEO. Then maybe it's time to find out." It sounded so easy when he said it, like she could just walk away from 30 years of her life, from the empire she'd sacrificed everything to protect, from the identity she'd built her entire existence around. Like she could just decide to be someone else. But looking at Ryan, at this man who'd lost his wife and rebuilt his life around being a good father, at this small house full of love instead of luxury, Vanessa wondered if maybe he was right. Maybe the life she'd been fighting for wasn't worth saving. Her phone buzzed. She'd turned it back on without thinking, and now messages were flooding in. Vanessa scrolled through them, her stomach sinking with each one. Richard had gone to the board, claimed she'd had a breakdown, suggested she was mentally unstable, a danger to the company, possibly being manipulated by outside forces. There were already articles being written, already speculation about her disappearance, already lawyers preparing papers that would strip her of control. "What is it?" Ryan asked. Vanessa handed him the phone, watched his expression darken as he read. "This is what you're going back to?" he said finally. "I don't have a choice." You always have a choice. Not when they're trying to destroy everything my father built. Vanessa's voice cracked. He trusted me with his legacy. I can't just let them take it. Ryan set the phone down. Your father's dead, Vanessa, and from what you've told me, his legacy is a company that treats people like commodities and taught you that power is more important than happiness. That's not something worth protecting. You don't understand. You're right. I don't understand your world. But I understand what it's like to hold on to something that's killing you because you think you owe it to someone who's gone. Ryan's voice was gentle but firm. And I'm telling you, as someone who's been there, the dead don't care about your loyalty. They just want you to be okay. Vanessa wanted to argue, wanted to explain that it wasn't that simple, that there were responsibilities and obligations and stakes he couldn't comprehend. But the words wouldn't come, because somewhere deep down she knew he was right. Her father wouldn't have wanted this, wouldn't have wanted her to sacrifice her life, her safety, her sanity for a company that saw her as a liability the moment she stopped being useful. I need to make some calls, she said finally. Use the guest room. Take your time. Vanessa went upstairs, closed the door, and stared at her phone for a long moment. Then she called her lawyer. Marcus Chen answered on the first ring. Where the hell have you been? Richard's claiming you had a psychotic break. The board's calling for an emergency vote, and the media is treating this like the second coming of the Hindenburg disaster. Marcus, slow down. Tell me exactly what's happening. For the next 20 minutes, Marcus laid it out. Richard had convinced the board that Vanessa was unfit to serve as CEO. He'd produced emails she'd sent at 3 in the morning, texts from years ago where she'd mentioned feeling overwhelmed, therapy records from when her father died that should have been confidential, but somehow weren't. He'd built a narrative of a woman cracking under pressure, and the board was eating it up because it gave them an excuse to do what they'd wanted all along, push her out and move forward with the merger. They're voting on Monday, Marcus said. Unless you show up and prove you're competent, they're going to remove you from your position and appoint Richard as interim CEO. Can they do that? With the evidence he's presented and your unexplained absence? Yeah, they can argue you've abandoned your duties. Vanessa closed her eyes. What are my options? Show up Monday. Face the board. Prove you're fine. Or... Marcus hesitated. Or what? Or walk away? Take the severance package they're offering, sign the NDA, and let them have it. What's the severance? $50 million, plus your stock options, which are currently worth about $200 million. You'd be set for life, Vanessa. You could disappear and never look back. $250 million to walk away from her life, from her father's company, from the identity she'd spent 30 years building. It should have been an easy choice. I need to think about it, Vanessa said. You have until Monday morning. After that, the decision gets made for you. Marcus paused. For what it's worth. I think you should take the money and run. That company has taken enough from you. After she hung up, Vanessa sat on the edge of the bed, staring at nothing. Downstairs, she could hear Emma waking up from her nap, hear Ryan's voice soft and patient as he asked if she wanted a snack. Could hear normal life happening without her. She could go back. Show up Monday. Fight Richard and the board and everyone who thought she was weak. Prove them all wrong. Win. Or she could walk away, take the money, disappear into a life where nobody knew who she was or what she was supposed to be. Both options felt like losing. There was a knock on the door. Vanessa, Emma wants to know if you'll help her build a blanket fort. Vanessa opened the door. Ryan stood there, hands in his pockets, looking like he had nowhere else to be and all the time in the world. A blanket fort? She repeated. It's a serious architectural undertaking. She needs experienced engineers. Despite everything, Vanessa smiled. I'm not an engineer. Neither is Emma, but that's never stopped her. Downstairs, Emma had already dragged every blanket and pillow in the house into the living room. She'd enlisted her stuffed animals as a construction crew and was giving them very detailed instructions about load-bearing walls and proper cushion placement. Vanessa! She shouted when she saw her. You can be in charge of the roof. Daddy's doing the walls because he's tall. For the next hour, Vanessa helped build the most structurally unsound blanket fort in history. Emma insisted on specific design features that made no engineering sense. Ryan kept accidentally knocking things over, and Vanessa found herself laughing, actually laughing, at the absolute absurdity of it all. Here she was, a billionaire CEO facing a corporate coup, building a blanket fort with a 6-year-old who was very concerned about whether the stuffed unicorn would have enough headroom. It was the best she'd felt in years. When the fort was finally complete, a sprawling disaster of mismatched blankets held up by chairs and hope, Emma insisted they all crawl inside. It was cramped and dark and smelled like fabric softener, and Emma immediately started telling them a story about a princess who lived in a blanket castle and fought dragons with kindness. Vanessa lay there, squeezed between Ryan and Emma, listening to a 6-year-old's rambling narrative, and felt something crack open in her chest. Not breaking, opening. Like she'd been holding her breath for 30 years and was finally remembering how to exhale. "You okay?" Ryan asked quietly, while Emma acted out a particularly dramatic dragon battle with her stuffed bear. "I don't know, son," Vanessa admitted, "but I think maybe that's okay." That night, after Emma went to bed, Ryan made dinner while Vanessa sat at the kitchen table and tried to decide what to do with her life. He didn't push, didn't offer advice, just cooked pasta and let her exist in her own head until she was ready to talk. "Marcus says I can walk away," she said finally. "Take a severance package. Let Richard have the company." What do you want to do?" I don't know. Every instinct I have says to fight, to show up Monday and prove I'm not weak, that they can't just push me out." Vanessa pushed pasta around her plate. "But then I think about going back to that life, and I feel like I'm drowning." Ryan set down his fork. "Can I tell you what I see when I look at you?" "What?" "Oh, someone who's been in survival mode for so long she forgot what it's like to actually live. Someone who built armor so strong she can't take it off even when she wants to." He paused. "Someone who's terrified that if she stops fighting, she'll disappear." Vanessa felt her throat tighten. "What if I do?" "Then you figure out who you are without the fight. And maybe that person is someone you actually like. You make it sound so simple. It's not simple. It's the hardest thing you'll ever do." Ryan's voice was quiet. "But I've seen what happens when people hold on to things that are killing them because they're too scared to let go. And I've seen what happens when they finally do. And I'm telling you, the fear is worse than the reality." Vanessa wanted to believe him, wanted to believe she could walk away from Sterling Industries, from the board, from Richard and his manipulation and the empire that had consumed her entire life. Wanted to believe there was something on the other side of that decision worth having. But 30 years of conditioning didn't disappear overnight. "I need more time to think," she said. "You have until Monday. That's 2 days. 2 days to decide whether to be Vanessa Sterling, CEO, or just Vanessa. 2 days to figure out if she was brave enough to choose herself over her father's legacy." She spent Saturday night lying awake in the guest room, staring at the ceiling, running through scenarios. She could go back, fight Richard, expose his manipulation, win. But even if she won, she'd still be trapped in a life that had slowly destroyed her. She'd still be alone, still be miserable, still be the woman who had billions of dollars and nobody who actually cared about her. Or she could walk away, take the money, disappear. And then what? Who was she without the company? What would she do with her life? The questions spiraled until Vanessa couldn't breathe, until she had to get up and pace the small room, until she found herself standing at the window looking out at the quiet street and wondering how people lived like this. Normal, simple, small. There was a soft knock on the door. "Vanessa, you okay?" She opened it. Ryan stood there in sweatpants and a t-shirt, his hair messy from sleep, looking concerned. "I can't sleep," she admitted. "Yeah, I figured. You've been pacing for an hour." "Sorry. I didn't mean to wake you." "You didn't. I'm a light sleeper. Old army habit." Ryan leaned against the doorframe. "You want to talk about it?" I don't know what to do." The words came out raw, desperate. "Everyone keeps saying it's my choice, but it doesn't feel like a choice. It feels like choosing between drowning and jumping off a cliff." "So pick the cliff." Vanessa laughed bitterly. "That's your advice? At least when you jump, you have a chance to figure out if you can fly." Ryan's expression was serious. "Look, I don't know your world, but I know what it's like to be stuck between a life that's killing you and a future that terrifies you. And I know that staying in the thing that's killing you because you're scared of the unknown is just a slower way to die. When did you jump? 6 months after Sarah died. I was working 60-hour weeks, barely seeing Emma, trying to prove I could handle everything by myself. One day Emma asked why I was always tired, and I realized I was so busy surviving I'd forgotten how to be her dad. Ryan paused. So I quit, took a job with better hours and worse pay, stopped trying to be the man everyone expected me to be, and started being the man Emma needed. Best decision I ever made. But you knew who you wanted to be. I don't. So figure it out. You've got time and money and no obligations except the ones you're putting on yourself. Ryan's voice was gentle. Vanessa, you've spent your whole life being what other people needed. Maybe it's time to figure out what you need. She wanted to argue, wanted to explain that it wasn't that easy, that there were consequences and responsibilities he couldn't understand. But looking at him, at this man who'd lost everything and rebuilt his life around love instead of power, she wondered if maybe she was the one who didn't understand. What if I make the wrong choice? She whispered. Then you make a different one. That's how life works. Me or it. After Ryan went back to bed, Vanessa stood in the guest room and made her decision. It wasn't rational, wasn't strategic, wasn't based on spreadsheets or market analysis or any of the tools she'd used to make every other major decision in her life. It was based on the fact that for the first time in 30 years, she'd spent a day being happy. Actually, happy. Not successful or powerful or in control, just happy. And that was worth more than any empire. Sunday morning, Vanessa called Marcus. I'm taking the severance, she said. There was a long pause. You're sure? No, but I'm doing it anyway. Okay, I'll draw up the papers. You'll need to come to New York to sign them. Can't you bring them to me? Vanessa, this is a $250 million agreement. You need to be present for the signatures, meet with the board one final time, make it official. Booked. Her stomach turned. When? I'll set that. Tuesday. I'll set it up for Tuesday afternoon. That gives me time to negotiate the terms and draft everything properly. Tuesday. She had until Tuesday to stay hidden, to exist in this strange limbo between her old life and whatever came next. When she came downstairs, Emma was already awake and demanding waffles. Ryan was at the stove, and the kitchen smelled like coffee and maple syrup and normal Sunday mornings. I'm walking away, Vanessa said. Ryan looked up. Yeah, I'm taking the severance, letting them have the company. I'm done. How do you feel? Vanessa thought about it. She felt terrified, relieved, like she was about to throw up, like she could finally breathe. I feel like I just jumped off a cliff. Ryan smiled. Good. Now let's see if you can fly. Emma insisted on celebrating Vanessa's decision with ice cream for breakfast, which Ryan vetoed in favor of waffles with ice cream on top, which was apparently an acceptable compromise in 6-year-old logic. They ate at the kitchen table while Emma explained in exhaustive detail why chocolate ice cream was scientifically superior to vanilla, and Vanessa tried not to think about the fact that in 48 hours she'd be signing away her entire identity. The calm lasted until Monday morning, when her phone started ringing at 6:30 a.m. Vanessa grabbed it off the nightstand, saw Marcus's name, and answered, It's not even 7. We have a problem. Marcus's voice was tight. Richard went to the media. There's a story running on every business outlet claiming you've been kidnapped. What? He filed a missing persons report. Told the police you were acting erratically before you disappeared, that he's concerned for your safety, that there may be foul play involved. Marcus paused. Vanessa, he's painting himself as the concerned friend trying to save you, and it's working. Vanessa sat up, her heart pounding. Can he do that? Oh. He already did. The story broke an hour ago. Your face is on every news channel, and Richard's doing interviews talking about how worried he is, how he just wants you to come home safely, how the company will do anything to help bring you back. That manipulative son of a... Vanessa stopped herself, very aware that Emma was probably awake downstairs. What about the assault? The airport footage? He claims he was trying to stop you from making a dangerous decision while you were having a mental health crisis. Says he was protecting you, not attacking you. Marcus's voice dropped. He's good. Vanessa, he's really good. Half the board is buying it, and the other half doesn't care because it gives them cover to remove you. So what do I do? Get to New York, today. We need to get ahead of this narrative before it destroys any chance you have of a clean exit. After she hung up, Vanessa sat on the edge of the bed, trying to breathe. She'd known Richard would fight back. She'd expected lawyers and board votes and corporate maneuvering. But this, weaponizing the police, the media, painting himself as her protector while destroying her reputation, this was a level of cruelty she hadn't anticipated. Downstairs, Ryan was making coffee. He took one look at her face and said, "What happened?" Vanessa told him, watched his expression go from concerned to furious. "He's claiming you were kidnapped," Ryan repeated slowly. "By who?" "He didn't say specifically, but I'm staying with you." So, Vanessa stopped as the implication hit her. "Ryan, if anyone figures out where I am, if they trace me here, they're going to think I'm the kidnapper." Ryan's voice was flat. "That I'm manipulating you, holding you against your will." "I'm so sorry. I didn't think I should leave. Right now, before anyone connects, stop." Ryan held up a hand. "First, you're not going anywhere until we figure this out. Second, did you come here willingly?" "Yes, but..." "No buts. You came here because you needed somewhere safe. I offered. You accepted. That's not kidnapping. That's hospitality." He poured 2 cups of coffee, handed her one. He poured 2. "But you're right that we need to be smart about this. If Richard's already spinning a narrative, showing up with me and Emma is going to make it worse." "So what do I do?" Ryan thought for a moment. "Marcus wants you in New York today?" "Yeah, to sign the severance papers and do damage control." "Then that's what you do. You go back, you sign the papers. You tell your story before Richard can twist it any further." Ryan met her eyes. "But you don't go alone. You take someone who can verify what actually happened." "Who?" "My assistant's loyal to the board. My lawyers work for the company." "Me?" Vanessa stared at him. "You can't. You have Emma and work, and Emma can stay with Mrs. Chen next door. She watches her sometimes when I have to work late. And I've got vacation days." Ryan's expression was serious. "Vanessa, if Richard's claiming you were kidnapped, you need witnesses who can say otherwise. People who aren't on his payroll. I saw what happened at that airport. I know you came with me willingly. And if anyone tries to say different, I'll set them straight. This isn't your fight." "You made it my fight when you trusted me enough to ask for help. And I don't walk away from people who need me." He paused. "Besides, Emma would never forgive me if I let someone hurt her new friend." New friend? Like Vanessa was just another person in Emma's life, not a billionaire CEO hiding from a corporate war. Like kindness was the default instead of the exception. "Okay," Vanessa said quietly, "but we do this my way. I pay for everything, flights, hotel, meals, and if things get ugly, you walk away. I'm not letting you get dragged into my mess more than you already are. Deal. But I'm paying for my own flight." "Ryan, I'm not your employee, Vanessa. I'm your friend. Friends don't charge each other for plane tickets." "Friend." The word sat strange in Vanessa's chest. She had colleagues, contacts, business relationships. She hadn't had a friend since college, and even that had been more about networking than genuine connection. But Ryan meant it. She could see it in his face, the quiet certainty that they were in this together, that her problems were his problems because that's what friends did. "Thank you," she said. "Don't thank me yet. Wait until you see how I handle corporate lawyers." They left for New York that afternoon. Mrs. Chen took Emma with promises of cookies and a movie, and Emma only cried a little when Ryan said he'd be back tomorrow. Vanessa watched him kneel down to Emma's level, watched him promise he'd call before bedtime, watched him hold his daughter like she was the most important thing in the world. That's what love looked like, she thought. Not grand gestures or expensive gifts, just showing up, being present, making promises and keeping them. The flight was tense. Vanessa kept checking her phone, watching the news coverage spiral. Richard had done 3 more interviews. each one painting her as more unstable, more vulnerable, more in need of rescue. The narrative was working. Public sympathy was firmly on his side, and speculation about her whereabouts ranged from rehab facilities to foreign countries to something much darker. "They're saying I might be dead," Vanessa said, scrolling through Twitter. Ryan looked over her shoulder. "Well, you're not, so that's one theory debunked. Richard knows I'm not dead. He's doing this to destroy any credibility I have left." She threw her phone into her bag. "When I show up alive, he'll pivot to saying I was being manipulated, that I wasn't in my right mind, that I need help. So prove him wrong." How? He's got the board, the media, probably half the NYPD convinced I'm a victim. Anything I say is going to sound defensive. Ryan was quiet for a moment. Then, "What if you don't defend yourself?" "What?" "Richard wants you to play defense, wants you scrambling to explain your actions, justifying your decisions. That makes you look guilty even when you're not." He turned to face her. "So don't play his game, tell the truth. Not as a defense, but as a statement of fact. You left because you were being threatened. You stayed away because you needed time to think. And now you're back to end this on your terms." It was so simple, so obvious. And Vanessa had been so focused on winning, on beating Richard at his own game, that she'd forgotten the most powerful weapon she had was the truth. They landed at JFK at 7 p.m. Marcus was waiting at baggage claim, looking like he hadn't slept in 2 days. "Thank God you're alive," he said when he saw her. Then he noticed Ryan. "Who's this?" "Ryan Carter. He's a friend." Marcus's eyes went sharp with the kind of calculation that made him an excellent lawyer. "The friend you've been staying with?" "Yes." "Does Richard know about him?" "Not yet, but he will." Vanessa kept her voice steady. "Ryan's the one who stopped Richard from choking me at the airport. He's my witness." Marcus studied Ryan for a long moment. Ryan stared back, unfazed by the scrutiny, and Vanessa realized that having someone in her corner who didn't care about corporate politics or legal strategy was exactly what she needed. "Okay," Marcus said finally. "Here's what's happening. We're signing the severance papers tomorrow at 2 p.m. The board wants a statement from you explaining your absence. And Richard's lawyers are threatening to contest the severance unless you submit to a psychiatric evaluation." "Absolutely not." "That's what I told them. So they're threatening to freeze your assets, claiming you're mentally incompetent to make financial decisions." Marcus pulled out his tablet, showed her the legal documents. "It's a bluff, but it's a good one. If you refuse the evaluation, it makes you look like you have something to hide." Vanessa felt the old rage rising. "So I'm trapped?" "Not necessarily." Marcus glanced at Ryan again. "You've been staying with Mr. Carter for how long?" "Since Friday," Ryan said. "And in that time, did Miss Sterling seem mentally unstable to you?" "No, stressed, yeah, dealing with some heavy stuff. But unstable, not even close." Marcus nodded. "That'll work. We'll get a statement from you, maybe a few character witnesses. Show that Vanessa's been functioning normally. It won't stop Richard's narrative completely, but it'll muddy the waters enough to get the severance through." "What about the kidnapping story?" Vanessa asked. "We're releasing a statement tonight. You left of your own free will after being assaulted by your business partner. You stayed with a friend while you considered your options. You're back now to finalize your departure from Sterling Industries." Marcus looked at her seriously. "But Vanessa, you need to be prepared. Richard's going to fight this. And when you show up tomorrow with a male friend nobody's heard of, he's going to use that against you." "Let him try," Ryan said quietly. They checked into a hotel. Separate rooms, Vanessa insisted, despite Ryan's protests about the cost. Marcus left them with instructions to get some rest and be ready for war tomorrow. Vanessa stood in her hotel room, looking out at the Manhattan skyline, and felt like a stranger in her own city. She'd lived here for 15 years, built an empire here, and now she was about to walk away from all of it. There was a knock on her door, Ryan holding 2 cups of coffee from the lobby. "Couldn't sleep either?" he asked. "No." Vanessa took the coffee gratefully. "I keep thinking about what happens after tomorrow, where I go, what I do, who I'm supposed to be." Ryan leaned against the doorframe. "You ever think maybe that's the wrong question?" "What do you mean?" You're so focused on who you're supposed to be that you're forgetting you get to choose who you want to be. He sipped his coffee. When Sarah died, everyone kept telling me I needed to be strong for Emma. Be the rock. Be the provider. Be everything Sarah was and everything I was supposed to be. And I tried, nearly killed myself trying to be perfect. What changed? Emma asked me why I never smiled anymore, and I realized I'd been so busy being what everyone needed that I'd forgotten how to just be. Ryan's voice was soft, so I stopped trying to be perfect, started trying to be present, and that made all the difference. Vanessa thought about the last 30 years, about every decision she'd made based on what her father would have wanted, what the board expected, what a CEO was supposed to do, about all the times she'd sacrificed her own happiness for someone else's vision of success. I don't know how to be anything except what I've been, she admitted. Then maybe it's time to learn. Tuesday morning came too fast. Vanessa dressed in one of her power suits, armor for one final battle. Marcus picked them up at noon, briefed them in the car on what to expect. The Sterling Industries building looked the same as it always had. 60 floors of steel and glass, a monument to corporate power. Vanessa had walked through those doors 1,000 times. This would be the last. The lobby was full of reporters, cameras, microphones. Vanessa heard the questions start before she was even through the revolving door. Miss Sterling, where have you been? Is it true you were kidnapped? Who is this man with you? Ryan stayed close, not touching her but present, his hand ready if she needed support. Marcus ran interference with the reporters while security cleared a path to the elevators. They rode up to the 60th floor in silence. Vanessa's heart was pounding, her palms sweating. She felt like she was walking to her own execution. The conference room was full, the entire board, plus their lawyers. Richard sat at the head of the table, looking concerned and relieved in equal measure, the perfect picture of a friend worried about a colleague's well-being. Vanessa, he said, standing. Thank God you're safe. We've been so worried. Save it, Richard. Vanessa took her seat, Ryan standing behind her like a bodyguard. I'm here to sign the papers and leave. That's it. I think we all deserve an explanation first. This from Robert Chen, the board chairman. You disappeared for 4 days without a word. Do you understand how that looks? I understand that after Richard assaulted me at O'Hare Airport, I needed space to think about my future with this company. Vanessa kept her voice level. I found that space. I made my decision. And now I'm here to make it official. Richard's expression shifted just slightly. Assault is a strong word. I was trying to help you. You grabbed my throat. Vanessa pulled out her phone, brought up the photos she'd taken of the bruises. This is what help looks like? The room went silent. Several board members shifted uncomfortably. Richard's lawyer leaned in to whisper something, but Richard waved him off. You were acting erratically, Richard said carefully. I was concerned you were going to make a decision that would hurt the company. The company, Vanessa interrupted. Not me. The company. That's all that's ever mattered to any of you. She looked around the table at these people she'd worked with for years, people who'd smiled to her face while planning her removal. I'm done. I'm taking the severance, walking away, and you can do whatever you want with Sterling Industries. Merge it, sell it, run it into the ground. I don't care anymore. Vanessa, you don't mean that, Robert said. Your father built this company. My father's dead, and he built a company that treats people like commodities and taught me that power is more important than happiness. The words came easier now, borrowed from Ryan, made her own. So, no, I don't want to protect his legacy anymore. I want my life back. She signed the papers, all of them. The severance agreement, the NDA, the transfer of stock options. Her hand shook on some of the signatures, but she got through it. When she was done, Marcus gathered the documents, gave her a nod that said they were legally binding now. She was free. Before you go, Richard said, I think we should discuss your friend here. He gestured at Ryan. The one you've been staying with, the one nobody's ever heard of. Don't you think that looks suspicious? Suspicious how? Vanessa stood up. A vulnerable woman, going through a crisis, isolated with a strange man. Richard's voice was smooth, concerned, poisonous. I'm just worried about your judgment, Vanessa. About whether you're thinking clearly, Ryan stepped forward. Let me save you some time. My name is Ryan Carter. I'm a single father from Chicago. I met Vanessa at the airport after you assaulted her. She asked for help. I offered it. That's the whole story. And you expect us to believe there's nothing else going on? Richard smiled. That a man with your background, military, financially struggling, raising a child alone, just happened to help one of the richest women in America out of the goodness of his heart? Yeah, that's exactly what happened. Or maybe you saw an opportunity, saw a woman in crisis and thought you could take advantage. Careful. Ryan's voice went cold. You're about 2 seconds from saying something you'll regret. Richard stood up, and Vanessa saw him make the calculation that Ryan was bigger, trained, dangerous if pushed too far. I'm just looking out for Vanessa's interests. No, Vanessa said. You're trying to control the narrative because you're scared. Scared that I'll tell people what you really are. Scared that your perfect image will crack. Scared that you'll lose the power you stole from me. I didn't steal anything. You're unfit to lead this company, and everyone in this room knows it. You're right. I am unfit. Not because I'm crazy or unstable or any of the other things you've been telling people, but because I'm not willing to destroy my life for a company that sees me as disposable. Vanessa gathered her things. So enjoy your merger, Richard. Enjoy the company. I hope it was worth it. She walked out. Ryan followed. Marcus brought up the rear, already on his phone with someone, probably damage control. The reporters were waiting in the lobby. Vanessa knew she should keep walking, should get out before they trapped her. But something made her stop, made her turn to the cameras. I'm Vanessa Sterling, she said, and I want to make something very clear. I was not kidnapped. I was not being manipulated. I left Sterling Industries because I was assaulted by my business partner and realized that the company I'd spent my life protecting didn't care about me as a person. So I'm walking away. And to anyone wondering if I'm okay, I'm better than I've been in years. The question started immediately, but Marcus was already pulling her toward the exit. They made it to the car, and Vanessa didn't look back at the building that had been her whole world for 3 decades. You okay? Ryan asked. No, but I will be. They went back to the hotel. Marcus said he'd handle the media fallout, make sure the severance was processed, finalize everything. Vanessa barely heard him. She was too busy feeling the weight of 30 years lifting off her shoulders. That night, Ryan ordered room service, and they ate together in Vanessa's suite. She should have been devastated, should have been mourning the loss of her identity, her purpose, her father's legacy. Instead, she felt lighter than she had in her entire life. What happens now? Ryan asked. Vanessa thought about it. She had $250 million, no obligations, and absolutely no idea what to do next. It should have been terrifying. I don't know, she said. And that's okay. Her phone rang. Unknown number. Vanessa almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Ms. Sterling, this is James Morrison. I'm the executor of your father's estate. Vanessa's stomach dropped. Is something wrong? Not wrong exactly, but there's something we need to discuss. Your father's will had a clause that was only to be executed under specific circumstances. Morrison paused. Circumstances that were just met. What circumstances? If you ever voluntarily left Sterling Industries, your father left instructions for what should happen in that eventuality. Morrison's voice was careful. Miss Sterling, you've just inherited a private trust fund and a property in Vermont that your mother owned before she left. Your father kept it all these years. He wanted you to have it if you ever chose to walk away. Vanessa couldn't breathe. My father knew I might leave? The will was very specific. He said, and I'm quoting here, if my daughter is reading this, it means she's finally chosen herself over the company. I hope she can forgive me for taking so long to do the same. After she hung up, Vanessa sat in silence. Ryan didn't push, didn't ask questions, just waited. My father left me a way out, she said finally. All these years, he had a backup plan in case I needed to escape, and I never knew. What did he leave you? A trust fund, and a house in Vermont, the one my mother grew up in. Vanessa laughed, the sound half sob. He kept her house, even after she left, even after everything. He kept it. Sounds like he understood what it meant to lose everything for a company. Yeah, I think he did. Vanessa looked at Ryan. I'm going to Vermont. I'm going to see this house. And then I'm going to figure out who I am when I'm not trying to be my father's daughter. That sounds like a good plan. Do you... Vanessa stopped herself. Never mind. Do I what? Do you and Emma want to come with me? Just for a few days. I know you have your life in Chicago, and I'm not trying to... Yes. Vanessa blinked. Yes? Yes, Emma would love it. And honestly, after the last 4 days, I could use a vacation. Ryan smiled. Besides, someone needs to make sure you actually relax instead of turning a Vermont farmhouse into your next empire. I'm not going to... Vanessa stopped. Okay, that's fair, but I'm serious about trying to change. I know, that's why I'm coming. They flew back to Chicago the next morning. Emma was waiting at Mrs. Chen's house, and when she saw Vanessa, she ran full speed into her arms. You came back, Emma shouted. I did. Is that okay? It's perfect. Did you finish your important business? Yes, sweetheart, I did. Good. Now you can come play with me and Mr. Whiskers. Yeah. And just like that, Vanessa was part of their world again. Like she'd never left. Like she belonged. That night, after Emma was asleep, Vanessa and Ryan sat on his back porch with coffee and looked at stars you couldn't see in Manhattan. Thank you, Vanessa said, for everything. For helping me at the airport. For letting me hide here. For coming to New York. For not thinking I'm crazy. You're not crazy. You're just someone who's been stuck for a long time and finally found a way out. Ryan was quiet for a moment. So what's this house in Vermont like? I don't know. I haven't seen it since I was 12. My mother took me there once before she left. It was old, falling apart, in the middle of nowhere. Vanessa smiled. It was the first place I remember feeling peaceful. Sounds perfect. Want to help me fix it up? Ryan looked at her, and Vanessa saw something shift in his expression. Something that had been building since the airport, since the blanket fort, since he'd stood beside her in that conference room and refused to let her face the wolves alone. Yeah, he said softly. I'd like that. Oh. They left for Vermont on a Thursday morning. Ryan's old Honda packed so full that Emma's stuffed animals had to share the back seat with construction supplies Ryan insisted they'd need. The GPS said it was a 9-hour drive. Emma said she could make it in 8 if they didn't stop for bathroom breaks, which Ryan vetoed immediately. Vanessa sat in the passenger seat watching Chicago disappear in the rearview mirror, trying to remember the last time she'd taken a road trip. Maybe never. Her life had been private jets and town cars and first-class everything. She'd forgotten what it was like to just drive somewhere, windows down, radio playing whatever came on, no agenda except getting there. You okay? Ryan asked about an hour in, when Emma had finally stopped narrating every single thing she saw out the window. I keep thinking I should feel worse about walking away from everything, but I don't. Vanessa looked at him. Is that wrong? Depends. You miss any of it? She thought about the penthouse, the corner office, the power lunches and board meetings, and constant pressure to be perfect. No, not even a little. And that scares me. Why? Because I spent 30 years building that life. If I don't miss it, what does that say about all the time I wasted? Ryan was quiet for a moment, his hand steady on the wheel. I don't think you wasted it. I think you learned what you didn't want. That's worth something. Daddy, I'm hungry, Emma announced from the back seat. We just ate breakfast an hour ago. But I'm still hungry. Road trip hungry is different from regular hungry. Ryan caught Vanessa's eye and she could see him trying not to laugh. Okay, we'll stop at the next exit. Yeah, Moscow. They ended up at a diner that looked like it hadn't been updated since 1975, with cracked vinyl booths and a waitress who called everyone honey and didn't bat an eye when Emma ordered pancakes at 11 in the morning. Vanessa got coffee that was somehow both too weak and too bitter, and it was the best coffee she'd had in weeks. So what's the plan when we get there? Ryan asked, stealing a piece of Emma's bacon. I don't really have one. Morrison said the house has been maintained but not lived in. My father had someone checking on it every few months, keeping it from falling apart completely. But Vanessa pushed eggs around her plate. But I haven't seen it in 18 years. For all I know, it's uninhabitable. Then we make it habitable. Ryan, you don't have to, I know I don't have to. I want to. He met her eyes. Look, I'm a contractor. Fixing broken things is literally what I do for a living. And taking a couple of weeks to help you fix up a house in Vermont sounds a lot better than going back to Chicago and pretending the last week didn't happen. What about Emma's school? Spring break starts Monday. She's got 2 weeks off. Ryan smiled. And honestly, she's been begging me for a real adventure. This counts. Emma looked up from her pancakes, syrup on her chin. Are there animals in Vermont? Probably, Vanessa said. Deer, maybe some bears if we're unlucky. Bears! Emma's eyes went huge. Can we see one? From very far away, maybe. This is the best trip ever, Emma declared, and went back to her pancakes with renewed enthusiasm. They drove through Massachusetts, watching the landscape shift from suburbs to small towns to actual wilderness. Emma fell asleep somewhere around the New York border, and Ryan turned the radio down low. Can I ask you something? Vanessa said. Sure. Why are you really doing this? And don't say because you want to help. Nobody upends their life for a stranger unless there's a reason. Ryan didn't answer right away, just drove, his expression thoughtful. When Sarah died, I was so angry. At the cancer, at the doctors who couldn't save her, at myself for not seeing the signs earlier. I was drowning in it. And then this woman I barely knew showed up at my door with groceries and just sat with me while I fell apart. Didn't try to fix it, didn't offer platitudes, just stayed. The same woman you mentioned before, Iwa. Yeah. Turned out she'd lost her husband a few years earlier, said she remembered what it was like that first week when everyone's around being supportive, and then they go back to their lives, and you're left alone with the grief. Ryan's voice was quiet. She saved my life that day. I really think she did, and I never got to pay her back because she moved away 6 months later. So this is you paying it forward. Maybe. Or maybe I just recognize someone who needs a friend, and I've got room in my life for one. He glanced at her. You don't have to have all the answers right now, Vanessa. You don't have to know who you are or what you want or where you're going. You just have to keep moving forward. They crossed into Vermont as the sun started setting, painting the mountains in shades of orange and purple that Vanessa had forgotten existed. Everything here was green and wild and so far removed from Manhattan that it felt like a different planet. Morrison had emailed her directions to the house. They followed a 2-lane highway deeper into the mountains, then turned onto a dirt road that wound through thick forest. The GPS lost signal about 2 miles in. You sure we're going the right way? Ryan asked, navigating around a pothole the size of a small car. The directions say stay on this road for 6 miles until we see a stone marker. Then turn left. 6 miles of this? Ryan eyed the road dubiously. Your dad really wanted you to work for it, huh? They found the stone marker, a moss-covered boulder with sterling carved into it, barely visible in the fading light. The left turn was less a road and more a suggestion. 2 tire tracks through overgrown grass that made Ryan's Honda bottom out twice before they finally saw the house. It sat in a clearing surrounded by forest, a 2-story farmhouse with peeling white paint and a wraparound porch that sagged in the middle. There was a barn off to the left, half collapsed, an old well with a rotted cover, and everywhere, weeds and wild growth reclaiming what humans had tried to tame. Wow, Emma breathed from the back seat. It's like a haunted house. It's not haunted, Vanessa said, though she wasn't entirely sure. The place looked abandoned, forgotten, like something out of a ghost story. They got out of the car. The silence was immediate and total. No traffic sounds, no sirens, no city noise at all. Just wind through the trees and somewhere far off a bird calling. Vanessa walked up to the porch, her footsteps echoing on wood that creaked ominously. The front door was locked, but Morrison had sent a key. She turned it, heard the lock click, pushed the door open. Inside smelled like dust and old wood and memories. The furniture was covered in sheets. There were pictures on the walls, faded photographs of people Vanessa didn't recognize. Her mother's family, probably, going back generations. The floors were hardwood, scuffed and worn. The kitchen still had an old gas stove that looked like it hadn't worked since the Reagan administration. It's bigger than I remembered, Vanessa said, her voice echoing in the empty space. Ryan walked through, his contractor's eye assessing everything. Foundation solid. Roof looks intact from outside. Electrical is probably shot. Plumbing's questionable, but the bones are good. Is that professional opinion or optimistic guessing? Little of both. He smiled. But I've worked on worse. This place could be beautiful with some time and effort. Emma was already exploring, running from room to room with the fearless enthusiasm of a 6-year-old who didn't understand structural integrity. There's stairs. Can I see upstairs? Carefully, Ryan called after her. Test each step before you put your weight on it. They followed Emma up. The second floor had 4 bedrooms, all empty except for dust and sheet-covered furniture. Emma claimed the smallest one immediately, the one with a window seat overlooking the forest. This is my room, she announced. I'm going to put all my stuffed animals on the window seat so they can see outside. We're not moving here, Em, Ryan said gently. We're just visiting. But we could move here. There's lots of space and animals, and Vanessa needs help fixing it. Vanessa felt something warm bloom in her chest. You'd want to live here? Yeah, it's perfect. Way better than our house in Chicago. Emma's face fell. No offense, Daddy. Kate. Dots. None taken. But we have school in Chicago, and my job, and all our friends. We could make new friends here. Ryan looked at Vanessa, and she saw the question in his eyes. The what if that neither of them had said out loud yet? Let's take it one day at a time, Vanessa said, saving them both from a conversation they weren't ready for. First, we need to figure out if this place even has electricity. It did, surprisingly. The water ran brown for 10 minutes before clearing to something that might be safe to drink. The heat worked but made concerning noises. Ryan declared it livable if they were willing to rough it a bit. They spent that first night eating sandwiches by flashlight because half the light fixtures didn't work, and unpacking sleeping bags because the beds all needed new mattresses. Emma thought it was the best adventure ever. Ryan looked exhausted but content. And Vanessa felt something she hadn't felt in years. Peaceful. She woke up at dawn to the sound of birds. Actual birds. Not city pigeons, but songbirds. Dozens of them. Making a racket that would have annoyed her a week ago, but now just felt alive. She went downstairs to find Ryan already awake, standing on the porch with coffee, looking out at the forest. There's a stream about 100 yards that way, he said, pointing. Heard it when I went looking for cell service. Any luck? Nope. We're officially off the grid. He handed her a mug. How do you feel about that? Vanessa thought about her phone, sitting upstairs with no signal, unable to reach her with news about the company or Richard's latest media attack or any of the chaos she'd left behind. Relieved. They spent the morning exploring the property. Emma found the stream and immediately tried to catch fish with her bare hands. Ryan assessed the barn and declared it savable with significant work. Vanessa walked through the overgrown garden behind the house and found remnants of what her grandmother had planted. Roses gone wild, herb gardens overtaken by weeds, a stone path barely visible under years of neglect. My mother told me her mom spent every morning out here, Vanessa said when Ryan joined her. Said she grew everything they ate, canned it all for winter. I remember thinking it sounded like so much work. And now? Now I think it sounds kind of nice. Having something to do with your hands, watching things grow because you took care of them. She pulled a weed absently. I've spent my whole life building things that don't actually exist. Companies, portfolios, market positions. Nothing real. Nothing you can touch. Ryan knelt down, examining what looked like it might be strawberry plants under all the weeds. So build something real, Sal. Over the next few days, they fell into a routine. Ryan would wake up early and assess what needed fixing. Vanessa would make breakfast, or try to, her cooking skills limited to things that came in boxes. Emma would explore every inch of the property and report back on her findings, like a tiny nature documentary narrator. The house revealed itself slowly. Behind the dust and neglect, there was beauty. Hand-carved banisters, original hardwood floors, windows that let in light like the place was designed to glow. Ryan started making lists of repairs, prioritizing by urgency. Vanessa started calling contractors for quotes on things Ryan couldn't fix alone. You're going to actually do this, Ryan said one afternoon, watching Vanessa schedule a plumber to replace all the pipes. Fix this place up, Why not? I've got the money. I've got the time. And it's mine. Actually mine. Not the company's or the board's or anyone else's. Vanessa looked around the kitchen, imagining it restored. Besides, you said I should build something real. I meant like a garden, maybe some raised beds for vegetables. I can do that too. Emma burst in from outside, covered in dirt and grinning. I found where the old chicken coop was. Can we get chickens? Absolutely not, Ryan said. Why not? Chickens are useful. They give us eggs. Because chickens require work, and we're only here for 2 weeks. Emma's face fell in that devastating way only 6-year-olds could manage. Vanessa felt her resolve crumbling. What if we got chickens for when we come back to visit? She heard herself say. Ryan shot her a look. Emma's face lit up like Christmas. Really? We can come back? If your dad says it's okay, then yes. This house is going to take months to fix properly. We'll need to come back. Vanessa met Ryan's eyes. If you want to. There was a long moment where Vanessa couldn't read his expression. Then Emma threw her arms around Vanessa's waist, and Ryan smiled, and the question was answered without anyone saying the actual words. That night, after Emma was asleep in her claimed bedroom, Vanessa and Ryan sat on the porch with beer from the general store they'd found 12 miles away. This is insane, Vanessa said. A month ago, I was running a billion-dollar company. Now I'm planning chicken coops. Having second thoughts? No, that's what's insane. She took a long drink. I should miss it. Should miss the power, the purpose, the feeling of being important. But all I feel is free. Ryan was quiet for a while, just listening to the night sounds. Can I tell you something without it being weird? Probably not, but try anyway. I'm glad you got on that plane to Chicago, but try. Glad you asked for help. Glad you're here. He looked at her. And it's not just because Emma's attached to you, though she definitely is. It's because I haven't seen you unhappy once since we got here. And that matters. Vanessa felt her throat tighten. It matters to you? Yeah, it does. She wanted to ask what that meant. Wanted to know if he felt the same pull she'd been feeling since that first day at the airport, the sense that something fundamental had shifted between them. But before she could find the words, her phone buzzed. They'd driven into town earlier to get supplies, and she'd briefly had service. She'd turned her phone back on long enough to check messages, then off again. But she must have forgotten. The message was from Marcus. Richard's been arrested. Fraud charges. FBI found evidence he's been embezzling from the company for years. Thought you'd want to know. Vanessa stared at the screen. Read it again. Showed it to Ryan. Well, he said finally. That's something. Yeah. Vanessa turned the phone off again. She should feel vindicated, victorious, something. But all she felt was tired. He destroyed my reputation, tried to steal my company, and it turns out he was a criminal the whole time. You okay? I don't know. Part of me wants to call Marcus, find out everything, watch Richard burn. Vanessa set the phone down. But the other part of me just wants to stay here and not care. So do that. Just not care? Why not? He can't hurt you anymore. And whatever happens to him, you're not part of it. You're here. You're free. That's what matters. He was right. The old Vanessa would have flown back to New York, would have given statements to the FBI, would have made sure Richard paid for every single thing he'd done. But the old Vanessa had been miserable. Okay, she said. I'm not going back. I'm staying here and I'm not looking back. Ryan lifted his beer. To not looking back. They clinked bottles, and Vanessa felt another piece of her old life fall away. The next week passed in a blur of repairs and small victories. The plumber fixed the pipes. An electrician replaced the wiring in half the house and promised to come back for the rest. Ryan rebuilt the front porch steps and declared them safe for the next 100 years. Emma helped Vanessa clear the garden, and they planted seeds that probably wouldn't sprout for months, but felt important anyway. Vanessa learned how to use power tools, burned her hand on the stove twice, discovered she was actually pretty good at painting if she didn't overthink it. Ryan taught her basic carpentry, patient with her mistakes, and Emma supervised everything with the authority of a tiny foreman. They worked during the day and cooked together at night. Real cooking, following recipes Ryan found online, making mistakes, and laughing about them. Emma set the table and told them about her discoveries from that day. They ate as the sun set, and afterward they'd sit on the porch until the stars came out. It was the most domestic Vanessa's life had ever been, and she loved every second of it. "I don't want to leave," Emma said one night, a week and a half into their stay. She was curled up in Vanessa's lap on the porch swing, half asleep. "We have to go back eventually, sweetheart. School starts again soon." "But I like it here. I like being with you." Vanessa's chest felt tight. "I like being with you, too." "Then why can't we stay?" Ryan looked at Vanessa over Emma's head, and she saw her own question reflected in his eyes. Why couldn't they stay? Emma's school could transfer. Ryan could find work in Vermont, or not work at all if he didn't want to. Vanessa had enough money that neither of them would ever have to worry about that again. They could make this work if they wanted to, but that was a conversation they weren't ready for yet. "Let's see how we feel when it's time to leave," Vanessa said carefully. "Maybe we'll come back sooner than you think." Emma seemed satisfied with that answer. She fell asleep against Vanessa's shoulder, and Ryan carried her to bed. When he came back, Vanessa was still on the porch swing, looking at the stars. "She's getting attached," Ryan said quietly. "To you. To this place." "I know. I'm getting attached too." Vanessa's heart skipped. "To the place?" "To everything." Ryan sat down next to her. "I came here thinking I was helping you fix a house, but somewhere along the way this started feeling like more than that. What does it feel like?" "Like maybe we're building something. Not just the house. Us. Whatever this is." He paused. "And I don't know what to do with that." Vanessa turned to face him. "I spent my whole life making calculated decisions, weighing pros and cons, planning 10 steps ahead, and it made me miserable. So maybe this time I don't plan. Maybe I just see where it goes. And if it goes somewhere complicated, then we figure it out together." Ryan studied her face like he was trying to read her thoughts. Then, slowly, he reached out and took her hand. It was such a simple gesture, but it felt monumental. "I haven't done this since Sarah died," he said quietly. "Haven't even thought about it. The idea of starting over with someone new felt impossible. And now? Now it feels less impossible, because you're not just someone new. You're someone who gets it, who understands what it's like to lose everything and have to rebuild." His thumb traced circles on her palm. "And Emma loves you. That matters more than anything else." "I love her too," Vanessa said, and realized it was true. Somewhere in the last 2 weeks, that chaotic, brilliant, exhausting little girl had become essential. "I love both of you." The words hung between them. Ryan's hand tightened on hers. "I'm scared," he admitted. "Scared of messing this up. Scared of what happens if it doesn't work. Scared of hurting Emma if—" Vanessa kissed him. She didn't plan it, didn't calculate whether it was the right move. She just leaned forward and closed the distance between them, and Ryan kissed her back like he'd been waiting for permission. When they pulled apart, he was smiling. "Okay, so we're doing this. We're doing this. No plans, no strategy. Just seeing where it goes." "Exactly." Ryan laughed, and it was the best sound Vanessa had ever heard. "This is either the smartest or dumbest thing I've ever done." Was he? Probably both. They sat together on the porch swing, hands linked, watching the stars. And Vanessa thought about how a month ago she'd been choking on corporate politics and Richard's manipulation, convinced her life was over. Now she was sitting on a Vermont farmhouse porch with a man who'd saved her life and changed it completely. And she'd never been happier. The universe had a weird sense of humor sometimes. The day before they were supposed to leave, Vanessa got another message from Marcus. The severance had cleared. $250 million, officially hers. Richard was facing 15 years for fraud and embezzlement. The board had issued a public apology for their handling of the situation. "You won," Ryan said when she told him. "Did I?" Vanessa looked around the half-finished house, the overgrown property, the life she was building from scratch. Because it doesn't feel like winning. It feels like starting over. "Maybe that's better than winning." Emma ran up to them, holding something in her cupped hands. "Look, I found a frog." The frog immediately jumped out of her hands and disappeared into the grass. Emma laughed, delighted rather than disappointed, and chased after it. I don't want to go back to Chicago, Vanessa said suddenly. I want to stay here, finish fixing the house, build the chicken coop, plant a real garden. I want to stay. Ryan was quiet for a long moment. Emma's got school. She can transfer. There's a school in the town we passed through. It's small, but it looked good. Iki patasi ikutsmaska. And my job? You're a contractor. You can work anywhere, or not work at all if you don't want to. Vanessa turned to face him fully. I have more money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes, Ryan. We could make this work if we wanted to, all three of us. You're serious. Completely. I know it's fast, I know it's crazy, but staying in Chicago, going back to our separate lives after this, that feels wrong. This feels right. Ryan looked at Emma, still chasing the frog through the grass, then back at Vanessa. You really want us to move in with you? Into this falling apart farmhouse in the middle of nowhere? Yes, if you'll have me. Vanessa, you're a billionaire. You could have anything. Why would you want this? She thought about her penthouse in Manhattan, her corner office, her old life of power and control and loneliness. Then she thought about pancakes with chocolate chip smiley faces, blanket forts, and falling asleep to the sound of birds instead of sirens. Because this is the first place that's ever felt like home. Ryan didn't answer right away. He just stood there watching Emma chase the frog through grass that needed cutting. And Vanessa could see him working through the logistics, the practicalities, all the reasons why moving to Vermont with a woman he'd known for 3 weeks was objectively insane. Then Emma caught the frog again, held it up triumphantly, and shouted, Daddy! Vanessa! Look! I named him Frederick. That's a great name, sweetheart, Ryan called back. Then, quieter, to Vanessa. We'd need to talk to Emma first. Make sure she understands what this means, that it's not just a vacation. Of course. And I'd need to go back to Chicago, pack up the house, tie up loose ends. That could take a few weeks. I can wait. And I'm not living off your money, Vanessa. I need to work, need to contribute. Then work. Open your own contracting business. There's plenty of old houses around here that need fixing. Vanessa paused. Or help me restore this one and I'll pay you a fair wage for it. Ryan smiled despite himself. You're really serious about this. I've never been more serious about anything in my life. He pulled her close, kissed her forehead. Okay, let's do it. Let's see if we can make this crazy thing work. They told Emma that night after dinner. She'd been lobbying for a second dessert when Ryan said they had something important to discuss. Am I in trouble? Emma asked immediately, eyes wide. No, baby. Nothing like that. Ryan sat down next to her. How would you feel about moving here, to Vermont, to this house? Emma's jaw dropped. Really? Like, forever? Like permanently, yeah. It would mean leaving Chicago, your school, your friends. It's a big change. But Vanessa would be here? Vanessa nodded. I'd be here. And we'd all live together, like a family? The word hung in the air. Family. They hadn't used it before, hadn't defined what this was becoming. But Emma said it so simply, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. Yeah, Ryan said softly, like a family. Emma launched herself at both of them, wrapping her arms around as much as she could reach. Yes, 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 yes. When can we move? Can Frederick come too? Can we get the chickens now? Ryan laughed, and Vanessa felt tears she hadn't expected burning behind her eyes. We'll have to go back to Chicago first, pack up our stuff, say goodbye to people. It might take a few weeks. But then we're coming back? Then we're coming back for good. Emma started making plans immediately. Which stuffed animals would get which spots in her room where the chicken coop should go. Whether they could get a dog too, because every farmhouse needed a dog. Ryan let her ramble, and Vanessa just listened, amazed at how quickly a 6-year-old could accept a complete life change as the best possible outcome. They left Vermont 2 days later with a plan. Ryan and Emma would go back to Chicago, pack up the house, and handle the logistics of moving. Vanessa would stay in Vermont, coordinate the renovations, and make the farmhouse actually livable before they returned. They'd aim for 6 weeks, maybe 8, depending on how fast Ryan could get everything sorted. The goodbye at the airport was harder than Vanessa expected. Emma cried and made Ryan promise they were really coming back. Ryan held Vanessa like he was afraid she might disappear if he let go. 6 weeks, he said. Maybe less if I can swing it. I'll be here. You better be, because if I show up and you've changed your mind, Emma's going to be devastated. Just Emma? Ryan smiled. Not just Emma. Vanessa watched them go through security, Emma turning back to wave until they were out of sight. Then she drove back to the farmhouse alone. And for the first time since she'd arrived, the silence felt lonely instead of peaceful. She threw herself into the renovations. The contractor she'd hired brought a crew that descended on the property like a construction army. They replaced the roof, rebuilt the barn, tore out and replaced every pipe and wire in the house. Vanessa worked alongside them when they'd let her, learning how to swing a hammer without hitting her thumb, how to read blueprints, how to tell the difference between load-bearing walls and ones you could knock down. She hired a landscaper to clear the overgrown gardens, ordered furniture from catalogs because the stuff under the sheets was too far gone to save, picked paint colors, warm yellows for the kitchen, soft blues for the bedrooms, green for Emma's room because she'd mentioned loving green. At night, Vanessa called Ryan and Emma. Emma would tell her about packing boxes and saying goodbye to friends, and how much she missed Frederick the Frog. Ryan would update her on the house sale, the moving timeline, how hard it was to decide what to keep and what to leave behind. I'm keeping Sarah's things, he said one night. The important stuff. Photos, her journals, the scarf Emma likes. I want Emma to have them when she's older. That's good, Vanessa said. She should know her mother. Mom. I've been thinking about how to handle that. You and me, this new family we're building. I don't want Emma to think we're trying to replace Sarah. We're not replacing anyone. We're just adding to what you already have. Vanessa paused. Sarah will always be Emma's mother. I don't know what I am yet. You're Vanessa. That's enough. Yes, 4 weeks in, the house started looking less like a construction zone and more like a home. The kitchen had new appliances and countertops that didn't wobble. The bedrooms had fresh paint and actual beds with actual mattresses. The porch was rebuilt and sturdy, with a swing that didn't creak ominously when you sat on it. Vanessa planted the garden herself, following YouTube tutorials and advice from the woman at the local nursery who thought it was hilarious that a billionaire was learning to grow tomatoes. She got chickens, 6 of them, because the guy at the feed store said you needed at least 6 for them to be happy. She had no idea if that was true, but she built them a coop anyway, following plans she found online and texting Ryan photos of every step. The community started to know her, not as Vanessa Sterling, former CEO, but just as Vanessa, the woman fixing up the old Sterling place. They were friendly in that cautious rural way, offering help but not pushing, inviting her to town events but not offended when she declined. She went to one community dinner at the church basement and spent 2 hours listening to stories about people who'd lived here their whole lives, generations of families who'd never left, because why would you leave when everything you needed was right here? It was so different from her old life that sometimes Vanessa had to remind herself it was real. 6 weeks to the day after Ryan and Emma left, they came back. Vanessa was in the garden pulling weeds when she heard the car, and by the time she made it to the front of the house, Emma was already out and running. Vanessa! Vanessa, we're home! Home. Emma said it without hesitation, and Vanessa caught her up in a hug that lifted the little girl off her feet. I missed you so much, Emma said into her shoulder. Chicago was so boring without you. And flat. Vermont is way better because it has mountains. Ryan was pulling boxes out of a moving truck, and when he saw Vanessa, he dropped what he was holding and crossed the yard in about 4 steps. He kissed her right there in front of Emma and the moving crew, and Vanessa kissed him back, and Emma made a grossed-out noise that was completely undermined by her giggling. The house looks amazing, Ryan said when they finally pulled apart. You've been busy. Wait until you see Emma's room. I might have gone overboard. Emma was already running inside, her voice echoing through the house as she discovered each change. The green walls, the window seat with cushions, the bookshelf Vanessa had built herself with only minor injuries. The little girl's shriek of joy was worth every hammer-smashed thumb. They spent the rest of the day unloading boxes and trying to figure out where everything should go. Ryan's tools went in the barn workshop. Emma's toys took over the living room despite Ryan's protests. Sarah's things, carefully packed in a special box, went in the attic for safekeeping. That night they made dinner together in the new kitchen, Emma setting the table with the dishes Vanessa had bought specifically for this moment. They ate as the sun set through windows that had been cleaned and repaired, and afterward they sat on the porch while Emma chased fireflies. "This is going to work, right?" Ryan asked quietly. "Us? Here? This whole thing?"
What do you see as stress?
Vanessa threaded her fingers through his. "I don't know. Maybe we'll fight. Maybe we'll drive each other crazy. Maybe in 6 months we'll realize this was a terrible idea. That's not reassuring. But maybe we'll wake up every day and choose this. Choose each other. Choose this weird little family we're building." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "I spent my whole life planning for every contingency. It never made me happy. So this time I'm just going to see what happens. And if it falls apart, then we figure it out. Together." Ryan pulled her closer. "I can live with that." The first few months were an adjustment. Ryan started his own contracting business, taking jobs around the county, fixing porches and barns, and the 100 things that broke when you lived somewhere with actual seasons. Emma started at the local school and came home with stories about new friends and a teacher who let them have class outside when it was nice. Vanessa found herself doing things she'd never imagined, volunteering at the community center, helping organize fundraisers for the school, serving on a committee to restore the Old Town Library. She used her business skills, but for things that actually mattered, helping a local women's shelter write grants, teaching financial literacy at the high school, investing in small businesses that banks had written off. It was strange being useful instead of powerful, but Vanessa found she liked it better. She also discovered she was terrible at cooking, mediocre at gardening, and surprisingly good at carpentry. The chickens liked her, but not as much as they liked Emma. The house needed constant maintenance because old houses were basically full-time jobs. And living with a 6-year-old meant your stuff ended up in weird places, and privacy was a suggestion at best. But every morning, Vanessa woke up next to Ryan in a bed that was theirs, in a house that was theirs, and she didn't miss her old life even a little. Emma called her Vanessa, not Mom, and Vanessa was fine with that. But sometimes Emma would grab her hand crossing the street, or ask her to read bedtime stories, or say things like, "Vanessa, tell Daddy he's wrong about dinosaurs," in a tone that implied Vanessa was clearly the authority on everything. And those moments felt like family in a way that didn't need labels. The news about Richard's trial filtered in through occasional Google searches. He'd been sentenced to 12 years for fraud, embezzlement, and a dozen other charges Vanessa didn't bother reading about. Sterling Industries had been absorbed by a competitor. The board members who'd tried to push her out had resigned in disgrace. Vanessa felt nothing about any of it. That life belonged to someone else. Winter came to Vermont like a freight train, sudden and overwhelming and beautiful. The first real snow fell in November, and Emma lost her mind with excitement. They built snowmen, had snowball fights, and Ryan taught both of them how to chop wood for the fireplace without losing fingers. One night in December, snowed in and content. They were sitting by the fire when Emma asked the question Vanessa had been waiting for. "Vanessa, are you going to marry my daddy?" But Samadis. Ryan choked on his coffee. Vanessa felt her face go hot. Emma, that's not really something you just ask people. Why not? You love each other. You live together. That's what people do when they love each other. Ryan started, but Emma was on a roll. "Madison's mom got remarried last year and Madison got a new dad, and she says it's really nice because now there's more people to love her. And I think it would be nice too, if you were official." "Official," Vanessa repeated. "Like really part of our family. Not just living here, but actually ours." Emma's voice went quiet. "Is that okay to want?" Vanessa looked at Ryan, who was staring at his daughter like he'd never seen her before. Then back at Emma, who was 7 now, and too smart for her own good, and looking at Vanessa with hope that was almost painful. "It's more than okay to want," Vanessa said carefully, "but that's something your dad and I would need to talk about. It's a big decision." "But you're thinking about it?" "Yeah, sweetheart, we're thinking about it." Emma seemed satisfied with that. She went back to her drawing, leaving Ryan and Vanessa to have an entire conversation with just their eyes. Later, after Emma was in bed, they stood in the kitchen not quite looking at each other. "So," Ryan said finally, "that happened. Your daughter just proposed on your behalf. That's a new one. She's not wrong, though, about us, about this. Ryan turned to face her fully. I love you, Vanessa. I didn't plan to. Honestly thought I'd never feel this way about anyone again after Sarah. But I do. And I want this. You, me, Emma, this house, this life. I want all of it. Vanessa felt her heart racing. I love you too. Both of you. This whole messy, complicated, beautiful thing we've built. So what do we do about it? I don't know. Get married? Make it official, like Emma said? Vanessa laughed nervously. Is it too soon? We've been together less than a year. People will think we're crazy. People already think we're crazy. Billionaire CEO runs away to Vermont to live with a contractor and his kid. We stopped caring about normal a long time ago. Ryan crossed to her, took her hands. But I'm not proposing because Emma wants me to. I'm proposing because I can't imagine my life without you in it. Because you make me laugh and you're amazing with my daughter and you're the strongest person I've ever met. Because when I think about the future, you're in every single version of it. That's not a proposal, Vanessa said, smiling through tears. That's just a statement of fact. Fine. Vanessa Sterling, will you marry me? Will you be Emma's stepmom and my wife and continue to be terrible at cooking but excellent at literally everything else? Will you build this weird, beautiful life with us? Vanessa thought about the girl she'd been at the airport, choking on Richard's hand and convinced her life was over. Thought about the woman she'd been in that penthouse, powerful and miserable and alone. Thought about who she was now, covered in sawdust half the time, chickens that followed her around, a little girl who asked her opinion on everything from dinosaurs to dinner. Yes, she said. Absolutely yes. Ryan kissed her, and Vanessa kissed him back. And somewhere upstairs, Emma was probably still awake and definitely listening because she let out a whoop that echoed through the whole house. They got married in March, right as winter started letting go, and the first signs of spring appeared. It was nothing like the society wedding Vanessa would have had in her old life. No massive guest list or designer dress or cathedral venue. Just a small ceremony in the town hall, witnessed by their neighbors and Emma's teacher and the woman from the feed store who'd sold them the chickens. Emma was the flower girl and took her job so seriously that she practiced her walk for 2 weeks beforehand. She wore a green dress that matched her room and carried a basket of wildflowers they'd picked that morning. When the officiant asked if anyone objected, Emma shouted, "Nobody better!" and made the whole room laugh. Vanessa wore a simple white dress she'd found at a boutique in town. Ryan wore a suit he'd owned since his wedding to Sarah, and he'd asked Vanessa if that was okay, if it was weird. She'd said no, because Sarah was part of their story too, part of what made them who they were. You didn't erase the past. You just made room for the future alongside it. When they said their vows, Vanessa promised to love Ryan and Emma, to build a life with them, to be present instead of perfect. Ryan promised to catch her when she jumped off cliffs, to remind her that she was enough exactly as she was. And Emma, who nobody had asked to say anything, announced that she promised to share her toys and not complain too much about vegetables. The reception was in the farmhouse they'd rebuilt together, and people brought food and drinks and stayed late into the night. Someone had a guitar, and there was dancing in the living room, and Emma stayed up way past her bedtime teaching the other kids how to catch fireflies in the yard. At some point, Vanessa found herself standing on the porch, looking out at the property that had become home. Ryan joined her, slipping an arm around her waist. "Any regrets?" he asked. Vanessa thought about it honestly. About the billions she'd walked away from, the power she'd surrendered, the identity she'd shed like a skin that didn't fit anymore. About the woman she'd been and the woman she'd become. "Not even one," she said. "Good, because you're stuck with us now." "I can think of worse fates." Emma appeared, dragging them both back inside because someone had started a conga line, and apparently that required parental participation. And Vanessa let herself be pulled into the chaos, laughing as Emma led them around the room, and thought about how a year ago she'd been choking in an airport, convinced her life was ending. Instead, it had been beginning. The news came a month after the wedding. Marcus called, said he had something to tell her about the Sterling Industries settlement. The company had officially dissolved, assets sold off to cover Richard's fraud. But in the final accounting, they'd discovered an offshore account in her father's name, money he'd set aside years ago, meant for Vanessa if she ever needed it. "How much?" Vanessa asked. "Another 100 million, give or take." She almost laughed. Of course, her father had one more surprise, one more safety net she'd never known about. Put it in a trust, she told Marcus, for Emma's education. And for the community center here, they need a new building. And the women's shelter. And whatever's left, invested in small businesses run by women who can't get traditional loans. You're just giving it away? I'm putting it somewhere it'll actually do some good. Vanessa looked out the window at the garden, where Emma and Ryan were planting vegetables for the summer. I don't need it anymore. Because that was the truth she'd learned in the last year. Money didn't make you happy. Power didn't make you whole. Control didn't make you safe. The things that actually mattered, love, family, purpose, peace, couldn't be bought or leveraged or strategized into existence. You just had to be brave enough to choose them. Summer came, and the garden exploded with growth. Emma's vegetables actually produced food, which shocked everyone, including Emma. The chickens laid eggs that tasted better than anything from a grocery store. Ryan's business was doing well enough that he had to turn down jobs. And Vanessa found herself happy in a way that didn't require justification or proof or anyone's approval. They had movie nights where Emma picked terrible films and made them watch anyway. Pancake breakfasts that turned into syrup disasters. Arguments about whose turn it was to feed the chickens. Normal things. Boring things. The kind of everyday life that Vanessa had spent 30 years being too important for. One evening in July, they were sitting on the porch after dinner when Emma said, I'm glad you got on that plane. Vanessa looked at her. What? That day you met Daddy at the airport. I'm glad you got on that plane to Chicago. Otherwise you wouldn't be here. I'm glad too, sweetheart. Do you think things happen for a reason? Emma asked, with the philosophical curiosity of a 7-year-old who'd been thinking too hard. Like, maybe you were supposed to meet us? Nah. Ryan started to say something about coincidence, but Vanessa stopped him. I don't know if things happen for a reason, but I think sometimes bad things lead to good things if you're brave enough to let them. What was the bad thing? Losing everything I thought I needed, having my whole life fall apart. But that wasn't bad. That's how you found us. And Emma was right. The worst day of Vanessa's life, standing in that airport with Richard's hands on her throat, watching her empire crumble, feeling like she'd lost everything, had been the beginning of the best thing that ever happened to her. Sometimes you had to lose yourself completely to figure out who you actually wanted to be. Yeah, Vanessa said, pulling Emma close. That's how I found you. The sun set over the mountains, painting the sky in colors Vanessa had learned the names for. The chickens settled in for the night. Somewhere in the barn, Ryan's tools waited for tomorrow's project. Inside the house, beds were made and dishes were clean and photos were hung on walls. Pictures of their little family, evidence of the life they'd built. Vanessa Sterling had been a CEO, a billionaire, a woman who commanded boardrooms and controlled empires. She'd been powerful and successful and absolutely miserable. Now she was just Vanessa, wife to Ryan, stepmom to Emma, chicken owner, amateur gardener, mediocre cook. A woman who'd traded a billion-dollar company for a farmhouse in Vermont and never looked back. And if someone had told her a year ago that this was where she'd end up, married to a contractor, raising chickens, finding joy in normal Tuesday evenings, she would have thought they were insane. But sitting on that porch with her family, Vanessa understood something she'd spent 30 years missing. Success wasn't about power or money or how many people answered to you. It wasn't about building empires or winning battles or proving you were the strongest person in the room. Success was this: a hand to hold, a child who trusted you, a home that felt safe, a life built on love instead of fear. Everything else was just noise. Daddy, Emma said suddenly, can we get a dog? Ryan groaned. Emma, we've talked about this. But Vanessa said she wanted one too. I did not say that, Vanessa protested, even though she kind of had. You said maybe. Maybe means yes if you ask enough times. And they argued about it good-naturedly while the stars came out, while the night settled around them, while their life continued in all its messy, imperfect, beautiful glory. Vanessa had spent her whole life chasing something that turned out to be nothing. But she'd found everything she needed in an airport terminal, in a 6-year-old's kindness, in a man who saw her not as a CEO or a prize to be won, but just as a person who needed help. She'd lost her empire and gained a home. lost her identity and found herself, lost everything she thought mattered and discovered what actually did. And in the end, that was the only victory that counted.